Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 6 of the anime series, Rokka no Yuusha. And this one was hella interesting in that, from the outset, picking up very much where we left off, Adlet is henpecked as the false among the Braves of the Six Flowers. It's all because of Hans's assurances that you could not have gotten into this temple in any way, shape, or form without those doors opening. And once they're open, that's it. They stay open, they stay locked, and everything like that. And Adlet's contention is somebody must have been able to get inside ahead of him. And he's thinking about, are there any saints that could have dug up from the underside and, come inside there? Somebody put forth in the comments, having a discussion back and forth on my previous episode discussion video, couldn't Hans have snuck in? Even I said that he was like a cat burglar. He's jumping around like a monkey. Couldn't he have gotten inside and out again within those few moments that, basically Adlet's attention had been taken by the, bodiless sort of suits of armor that were on the attack to going after this fiend? And we find out that through the dialogue of Flamey, this fiend shouldn't have even been this close to the temple. So something is going on, something is amiss. And by the end of the episode, of course, Adlet's contention is maybe there are not, in fact, just, a seventh to worry about. Maybe there's actually a seventh and eighth working in tandem and working with the fiends to boot. And that's quite intriguing and flabbergasting because that does sort of widen the gamut and answers much of the speculation I've been putting forth and have been having in conversations in the comments on my episode discussion videos about perhaps there being more people involved. And it's really interesting that we get a call back to Adlet's life. We see he and his friend were trying to become protectors of their little village. He was very much not even concerned with being a warrior. He wanted to be sort of a farmhand, a farmer, picking mushrooms and, just taking in the aroma as his mother cooks their meals. And he suffers some type of loss, and I'm just going to assume that his mother is killed or something happens to her. And this is what propels him to apparently climb a mountain, and this big Odin-looking shaman guy, he wants to be taught how to become the strongest man in the world. And very much like the Charlie Chaplin aesthetic, smile though your heart is breaking, that's what this guy says while handing a beat down, handing him his ass. Smile even in the most dire of circumstances. Don't let it beat you. Don't let, yourself crash under the weight of depression or frustration or anger or sadness, all these different things. Find your smile, and that is the root of your strength in the face of any adversity. And there is, a large chunk of that is true. That is the case in the real world. And so we see that he is very much an honorable person. I don't suspect him at all, unless he is unknowingly the false among the Braves, as I put forth in speculations in previous episode discussion videos, where I said maybe somebody, gave him that, Braves of the Six Flowers marking, and he just assumed it was the genuine article, and he doesn't even know. He's unknowing that he might be the false one. Or maybe it is true that he is very an honorable character and was chosen by the goddess of fate or whoever has done this choosing because of his honorable and very moralistic and compassionate nature. And it's interesting when you have, Nashtania, her reaction to just all of the evidence seemingly being poured on by Hans and Mora, and even Shamo was like champing at the bit to go after him. Goldoff is definitely trying to take his head off at one point. Just the sheer amount of seeming evidence, none of which is as yet proven. We just have to take the words of these characters, but he looks thoroughly guilty, and Nashtania seems taken aback by this, like, how? In a manner of speaking that almost plays into that speculation that I put forth in the previous episode discussion video, where I said, could she have, tricked him, essentially, used her power to gimmick up Brave of the Six Flowers marking because she knew him to be trustworthy, or she sensed that he was trustworthy and was an honorable person, and maybe she feared that all of these people coming together would have their own sort of impetus as to why they're there, and maybe they wouldn't all be trusting of each other, and she wanted somebody from the outside to come along for the ride, to be the voice of reason and the conscience, and be an honorable person, someone she could actually put her faith and trust in. And it seems almost to me like when they're spelling out Adlet as the guilty party, she almost can't comprehend it. Is it because she is thoroughly moved by him and trusts him? Just, plainly, because he was chosen and she was chosen, apparently. There's still, it's still out for the count that maybe she was the fake, amongst them, in some manner, because she wanted to escape the kingdom or whatever it was, and that life. But perhaps it was her doing, her manipulation, that made him the false. And so she is just gobsmacked that anyone could say he is the false seventh. He's the usurper. He's the one to sabotage the entire affair, because he shouldn't have anything to do with it in her own mind. That's the way I was kind of taking her reaction along those lines. We also learned that the markings themselves, the genuine markings, if any of the Braves dies, their sort of flower petal representation in the markings, in all of their markings, will disappear. And that is how Mora knows that, Adlet has not, as he spirits away with Flamey holding a poisoned dart to her neck and saying the second one will kill her, making himself look guilty as all hell. But as he spirits away, they know he hasn't actually killed her, because that flower petal on their markings has not disappeared. That is interesting, that they can kind of keep tabs on each other, even without being, within arm's reach of each other. And of course, there's the whole aspect of Flamey, asking Adlet by the end, why did he want to be a brave? Why did he want to go against the demon god and all this stuff? Sort of eschewing all of his claims of being the strongest man in the world and everything like that. That bravado that he truly believes, whether it is the case or not, remains to be seen. He's a MacGyver mother trucker, because he's got flash grenades and everything that he's using to get away from everybody. And, he's strategically going over it in his mind. How could somebody have gotten inside this temple? How could somebody, maybe the whole entire thing was to set him up from the impetus. And even Flamey has to admit, it's a valid thought. I hadn't thought of it, but there's some validity to it. But in her asking, once again, Flamey comes to the fore in my mind, in that essence that, through all this turmoil, she was born from a mother, as we find out through the dialogue. She explains, a mother who was created over time, forcibly created, perchance, genetically tweaked or whatever. She was not a thoroughbred fiend. She was a special kind of fiend that they had to concoct. And I'm sure she suffered for it. And this was all to create then Flamey, with a human father who they then dispatched. They murdered, essentially. Who knows what happened to the mother figure? She may have never known, that well, or may have only had a couple sort of interactions with. But her life from that point was a darkened path, because her sole purpose was to go and seek out and kill the Braves, kill innocents, people who were good. And it could be that she's had a completely turn of conscience to the point where she wants at the demon god, the one who caused all of this strife for herself. And, sort of like a revenge ploy. That could be her driving force. And so by the end of this episode, really not that much further as far as who could be the guilty party. There's still a lot of different aspects as to who it could be. What I think is chiefly the most interesting aspect is none of these characters, with the exception maybe of Nashitania and in her own way Flamey and Adlet, none of them seem to be very honorable. I mean, for Golduff to lunge at Adlet and try to take off his head, Hans is obviously not very an honorable person, a compassionate and, heroic person, put it that way. He is a paid assassin, so go figure. Shimo being, of course, the child, once again, who is talking about torture and murder and all this kind of stuff. And it brings me to this realization, like they're talking about somebody came into this temple and activated this barrier, this fog barrier. And only that person could either undo it willingly or it would be undone by their subsequent death. Well, then why not line all these idiots together and get them to try to, configure the temple, that whole thing, the lock and key with the dagger and whatever, try to undo it. If they want to find out who is honorable and who is suspect, they could all try, and they would all, whoever has that knowledge or whoever has the basic idea of how you would deactivate it, they should all do the same thing. And one of them inevitably is going to have to, down this barrier. But the whole point of keeping hidden is, they're going to keep redirecting everyone's attention to who the guilty party could be and not just use common sense and try to actively deactivate the thing. As I say, whoever the seventh is, whoever the false among them is, could just go through the motions and fake it and it wouldn't be deactivated. But if everybody actually tried, did the same thing, they were all standing next to each other and could like eagle eye each of the steps and everything, you would think, be able to whittle down who is probably the one that is lying here. Mora seems to have the knowledge, going into this. Hans should, but doesn't, Shimo has no idea. And all these things. I mean, there has to be a way that they could put forth to try to shut this thing down without having to resort immediately to putting the so-called villain, or just the suspected villain, to death. These are supposed to be the heroes, the saviors of the world, and their first choice is to kill the person they think might be guilty. That seems a little fishy to me in the end. So, of course, we will have to wait and see what happens in the next episode, and I'll be on the edge of my seat just waiting to find out and seeing who does prove to be the false among them. I continue to lay out my speculations, and I feel like Flamey is probably the likeliest at the moment. Just as I said, because of the life she's led, she might want to seek the demon god out of revenge. Why did I have to be forced into this life, this horrible, horrendous, fighting for my life, killing innocents, basically stead? It's all your fault. And she's now gunning for the demon god. That's kind of what I feel like is the likeliest at the moment. Adlet being the second behind her as far as being unknowing. As I said, maybe Nashtania created that, marking on him to bring him along for the ride. And I guess in a manner of speaking, I could see Nashtania again trying to escape that lifestyle that she feels very unfulfilled by and trapped within, and wanting to go on an adventure and stealing off with one of the genuine braves, if Adlet is truly a brave. And as far as all the other characters, I mean, they all seem like potential fakes, especially with this added, information about their potentially being an eighth, the seventh and eighth working in tandem. As I've talked about in previous videos, there are still characters, Ryota, for one, who are so far missing. We don't know where they are. We don't know what they're up to. Perhaps one of these former saints, or multiple of these saints, could have been turned, could have ulterior motives, could be working behind the scenes, and it will be revealed to us later what, impact they're having on all of these events. But again, I can't wait to find out. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 6 of Rokka no Yuusha, if you've seen it, and where your head is at as far as who do you think the likeliest contender for being the false seventh is. Do you think Adlet's theory about a seventh and eighth working together could be true? And if so, who do you think they are? Who do you think are working together along those lines? I've been very suspect of Mora and Shimo being so seemingly familiar, and yet they both seemingly arrived separately, I guess. Or at least we're led to believe in this episode, whereas I thought they arrived together. And then there's the whole Hans thing. I mean, it could go any which way as far as I'm concerned. And I'd love to hear from you what your thoughts are on this episode and who might be that false seventh. So otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.